Hi, my name is Brooke Mckean. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer at Chicago Scholars, and I'm thrilled to be here today on World Kindness Day to talk about our Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, quality education, which is so important to achieving all of the other goals. I have been an executive in nonprofit organizations and education institutions for over 10 years and wanted to share a little bit of my learning and experiences doing this work and wanted to kind of do a deep dive on two of the results as a part of the sustainable education goals and quality education goal number 4. So result 4.3, ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, including university. I wanted to highlight this. Working at a college access organization, many folks don't emphasize university because they're thinking about vocational pathways or other technical trades, particularly for marginalized populations. And I want to say that that is so important. I don't want to deny that, but I want to emphasize the importance of having multiple pathways for any group or organization that you're supporting with education. The high achieving individuals that are part of marginalized communities are the future generation of leaders for any country or city that you're working in. By putting those who are the most marginalized in positions where they can lead the companies of where they live, lead the governments, leading those efforts is transformative to a country and society. We've seen that firsthand at Chicago Scholars, where some of our scholars coming from low income, first generation backgrounds are serving in C-suite roles in companies across the United States and ultimately transforming the way those companies approach diversity and inclusion and the way that they hire and support other scholars who come up following them. It's just so powerful to recognize that university can be transformative for leadership. And I know that it can feel when you're focusing on the needs of a society and getting those technical skills, being able to find that and build that working class labor and workforce and obviously continue that is so powerful and important, but recognize that it's also the people who are in charge that need to change too. I also wanted to deep dive into Sustainable Development Goal number 4.5. By 2030, eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, Indigenous people, and children in vulnerable situations. So powerful, such ambitious goals that we have set for ourselves. Within this goal, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of a term that we use at Chicago Scholars called READY, racial justice, accessibility, equity, diversity, and inclusion. These are so, DEI is kind of the new trend, racial justice, with all that's happened in the last year. But this is something that we've been working on for the last 3 years to integrate into every aspect of our programming and how we think about our work. And I bring this up to recognize that context matters. You think about equity in education. In some cases, it is young women who are displaced or don't have access. In many countries, child marriage is a major problem in access to education. I worked at a time in Haiti as a part of the earthquake emergency response, and you found that many children were displaced or in rest-a-vec type situations where they're essentially slave labor to families and unable to access education or opportunities. Each country has their unique challenges in terms of access. In Chicago, what we find is that many young men of color, particularly Black young men, have dramatically lower outcomes than any other demographic. You have 70% women in college, 30% men, and that is inevitably over time going to have a huge impact on our society, on our culture, and our access to a bright future. And so you might, for those of you who've worked many years in international development, thinking about gender and access to women's education, incredibly important, but know the context of each place that you're working in. Young men in Chicago, to transform this city, we've made an emphasis in our organization on supporting young men of color in finding those university and other pathways. I also wanted to just talk about the value of working with teachers and growing not only the quality of teachers, but who are those teachers supporting our youth. The power of having someone who has the same lived experiences as you, thinking about in the US, having a greater diversity of teachers. Can there be more young Black men as teachers in our schools? In our space, and I think in the international development world as well, it's very dominated by white women. Look at your colleagues, look at the people in charge. It's often white women and white men leading large international nonprofit organizations. And that has an impact in how we make decisions, how organizations are led. I'm proud to be a part of an organization whose executive team is primarily people of color. And that has taught me so much about how to lead effectively, how to serve our students, how to really think grounded in the lives and lived experiences of those being served. And so thinking about education and supports, having those lived experiences is so powerful in who's teaching our students. They have mirrors to what they could be, what they can see in their future, seeing those stories, telling those stories of individuals who've been through the same thing, who've had those same challenges, but have made it through and have done incredible success in their lives. Those stories are so powerful. On the flip side, I also want to acknowledge and emphasize the importance of being able to connect meaningfully with people who are different from you too. It's also a cornerstone of our programming at Chicago Scholars. And not to say that every single one of us has a role in education and in supporting the next generation of young people, but recognize what is your place and what is not based on your own identity, your own journey, and what you can bring to the table. So those are just kind of a few things I wanted to share and pass along. So it's been wonderful to be a part of this effort. So excited to hear other speakers from the day and see how it goes. And thank you all for your time and wishing you the best in what's next.